Elizabethan era, named after Queen Elizabeth I. This period of profound political, cultural, and economic upheaval would change the very course of British history forever. In many ways, it was an age of transition. People had begun to abandon their medieval worldviews in favor of a more empirical and systematic approach to understanding the world around them. However, superstition and legend still held sway over the minds of the British populace. Amidst this backdrop, the newly burgeoning study of natural philosophies, as science was known in those days, pushed back relentlessly against what it believed to be a primitive reverence for witchcraft, omens, folklore, and fairies. For a moment, it seemed that perhaps an age of enlightenment might emerge from this fray. That is, until, with a crash of thunder, the doors of St. Mary's Church located in Bungay, Suffolk, England blew open. And in bound the devil himself. History is rife with tales of the inexplicable and the unknown. Stories so bizarre, they send the fingers of doubt creeping into the recesses of our very minds. Join us as we investigate.
This week in Creepy History.
Hi, I'm Laura Kram, and welcome to Season 1, Episode 3 of the Creepy Acres podcast. This week in Creepy History. And with me tonight, as always, is my beautiful Bigfoot co-host, the breathtaking,
Keep going.
smart, funny,
Keep going. Keep going. Keep going.
marvelous Sam Squatch.
I am going to tell you right now, winning that bet with you was the best goddamn thing that ever happened to me.
I couldn't think of more adjectives. Is that what it is?
I don't know. I look. You could have gone with stupendous, maybe colossal, staggering, spectacular, tremendous. Prodigious.
Oh,
I think that's a word. You know what? You could have just gone with arousing.
I could have, but I chose not to. Can't win them all.
Okay, at this point, I should just be happy that you didn't say like fat and hairy, because I mean, usually that's all I get from you.
I would never say that ever.
You just said it right before we started recording.
That was off air.
When it's off air, it doesn't count. I know the rule. God damn it.
Sam.
Yes, Laura, what's going on?
How are you?
You know what? I'm all right. A little hungry. Got a little bit of a headache, but I'm good. I'm good.
You're always hungry.
You know what? It's true. I am. It's true.
Do you like tacos? Eat some tacos.
Oh my God. Who doesn't love tacos?
Just asking. I don't know what a Bigfoot eats.
Yes. God damn it. Yes. Do I prefer burritos from a microwave in a gas station? Yes. I can't help it.
Well, go eat something so you're not so hangry.
Yeah, I'm good.
All right. Guess what we're talking about this week.
I don't know. What are we talking about?
The Black Shuck.
What the hell is a Black Shuck?
You know, come on.
I look. If I'm gonna take a wild guess here, I'm going with. It sounds like a god awful disease where shit just starts falling off.
No.
God.
You're wrong.
Shit. I was really banking on that one. God damn.
Nope.
I don't know. What is
it? It's a big, ghostly black dog.
Oh my God.
Huge.
Oh my God. Yeah. Okay. How huge is huge?
Big.
Could I ride it like a pony?
Yes.
Oh my God. All right. I'm on board. All right. Let's hear about this baby.
All right. Yeah. Let's turn it over to Nathaniel Leonards and he can tell us all about it.
August 4th, 1577. While at first glance, some might mistake this day for a Thursday, it is important to remember that in 1577, the Gregorian calendar, the current device used to measure the solar year was not yet in use in Britain. In fact, it would not be implemented for another 175 years. Instead, England observed the Julian calendar, which had been established by Julius Caesar himself 1,622 years prior, in 46 BC. It is because of this that August 4th, 1577 was in fact a Sunday. It was the Christian Sabbath. It was a holy day. And due to the Act of Uniformity passed by the Parliament of England just 16 years prior in 1559, church attendance was required on all holy days. For those that ignored or defied this declaration, punishments would be delivered. It was because of this that despite a raging storm outside, St. Mary's Church, located in Bungay, Suffolk, England, was packed with parishioners on that morning. In that church they sat, God's loyal flock, waiting like lambs to the slaughter. It was between 9 and 10 a.m., and a massive storm had enveloped the entirety of Suffolk, England. As the tempest rages, rain falls in astonishing abundance with the ferocity of a hurricane. Lightning rips across the sky as a cacophony of thunder and wind shakes the heavens and earth alike. Despite being the house of the Almighty himself, the sheer, raw power of nature's fury in its full display leaves the congregation gathered there in St. Mary's Church terrified. Unprepared for the almost unnatural speed at which the storm plunged the skies over their village into utter darkness, candles go unlit, and the cavernous interior of the church is left to be illuminated solely by the flashes of lightning. Despite all of this, the minister pushes on with his sermon. By now, many in the congregation are no longer simply praying for salvation for their immortal souls, but instead praying for deliverance from the chaos raging outside those doors. To many, it appears as if it is the end of days. And then it happens. Just as the minister reaches the second lesson of his sermon, there comes an ear-shattering clap of thunder. And with that, the doors of St. Mary's explode open. And the storm sweeps into the church like a wave. And with it comes wind and rain and noise and fury. And something else. Something inhuman. A dark, monstrous, shadowy form bursts into the holy house and streaks and weaves its way like a wraith, moving about the bewildered and helpless congregation that stands blind in the darkness of the building. Then it bolts straight down the center of the church's nave, past the numerous pews full of frightened families, until it comes to two members of the congregation kneeling at the front of the church. Perhaps the 40-year-old man and 15-year-old boy were lost in prayer, or perhaps they continued praying, hoping that their God would hear their pleas and protect them. Either way, the people of Bungay watch in helpless horror as the scene unfolds before them, revealed in the strobe of lightning that sporadically illuminates the holy house in fearful flashes of fire. There, in the storm-shrouded church, stands a hellish beast that wrenches back both their heads and snaps their necks in its jaws. In the lightning, it is finally revealed. It stands upon four legs, a massive canine, which some claim was as large as a horse. It is covered in a shaggy black fur, and its eyes are ablaze. And all about this monstrous beast dances a strange smoke and fire. The hellish hound spins, only to catch another man, and its wicked jaws latching onto him with a merciless bite. English clergyman, translator, and prolific writer Abraham Fleming would explain in his book, A Strange and Terrible Wonder, wrought very late in the parish church of Bungay.
Passing by, another man of the congregation gave him such a gripe on the back that therewithal he was presently drawn together and shrunk up, as if it were a piece of leather scorched in a hot fire, or as the mouth of a purse or bag drawn together with a string.
Despite this horrific and bizarre injury, the man would somehow survive. Then the unholy thing once again turns and charges down the center aisle and back through the open doors and vanishes into the storm from whence it came. However, in a seemingly final act of malicious spite, as the hellish beast storms out of the building, into the rain and into the fury, lightning strikes St. Mary's steeple, causing the spire, or perhaps the steeple in its entirety, to topple and collapse through the roof and into the church itself. Unfortunately, for the people of Britain, the story does not end here, for Bungay was not the only village visited by darkness that day. Just 12 miles to the south, in Blythburough, or as it is known to some locals, Blythburough, others had gathered for their Sunday sermon as well, there at the Holy Trinity Church, a massive cathedral that rose from the marshy landscape that the village was built upon. They too were caught in the grip of the storm, unaware not only of the horrors that had transpired at St. Mary's in Bungay minutes earlier, but also that the very same ill-fated destiny was even now hurtling toward them. As they sat inside what they believed were the protective walls of the church, something wicked and ruinous was descending upon them. According to legend, the ghastly thing once again burst into the church, but this time it came to rest upon the church's rood screen. This feature, found typically in churches built in Western Europe chiefly during the 14th, 15th, and 16th centuries, was typically created of ornately and richly carved wood or stone that formed a sort of screen that separated the nave or main center portion of the church from the chancel or front portion around the altar area. It was upon this that the creature was said to position itself, and from there it stared down at the congregation with those blazing eyes, and then it swung down. What happened next is recounted in local verse.
All down the church, in the midst of fire, the hellish monster flew, and passing onward to the choir, many people slew.
When the carnage was over, 2 men and a boy lay dead. Others in the church would suffer mysterious burns, as if the demonic beast's very presence were somehow linked directly to the fires of Hades themselves. Then, once again, it took flight and bolted from the church, crashing through the northern door and back into the raging tempest. The creature's name is possibly derived from the Old English word shuka, meaning demon, or possibly from the local dialect word shucky, meaning shaggy or hairy. Either way, the beastly thing would be dubbed Black Shuck. However, many would claim it wasn't a beast at all, but rather the devil himself. This belief was solidified for many when the survivors of the Holy Trinity Church found the door the monster had exited through marred by claw marks forever scorched into the door's heavy timbers. These devil's fingerprints, as they would be called, are still visible to this day. That would not be the only mark left on the people of Suffolk. Besides the many local shops and businesses that bore the creature's name, one only need to look up at the weather vanes and the coat of arms of Bungay to see the impact of this legendary creature, as both feature the beast. Even now, nearly 4.5 centuries later, Black Shuck still seems to haunt the minds of the people of Suffolk. However, from the Gwishgi in Wales to the Bargast in Northumberland, to Black Shuck in Suffolk to Cushy in Scotland, tales of giant hellish dogs are found across Great Britain in its entirety. So, what was Black Shuck? Was it simply a large dog, frightened by the storm that tried to hide inside the only place it could find shelter and people? But in its fear, it lashed out at those around it. Or was it something dark and malevolent that was set upon the town as some form of hellish or perhaps even divine retribution? Or was it something else entirely? One could dismiss the entire story as a hoax. After all, the story of a giant dog seems so fantastical. That is, one could have dismissed it as such until 2013, when something unexpected surfaced. Archaeologists from Dig Ventures, the world's first ever crowd-funded and crowdsourced archaeological excavation team, were excavating Leiston Abbey, one of the most completely preserved examples of a pre-Monstratensian monastery in England, and considered to have some of the finest surviving monastic remains in all of Suffolk. There, near the abbey's kitchen, buried in a shallow grave dug only 20 inches deep, they unearthed a skeleton of a massive dog that in life would have weighed over 200 pounds and measured a colossal 7 feet in length.
You're gonna want to say this.
Experts were able to age the grave to around the same time Black Shuck terrorized the area. Also of note is that while Leiston Abbey is located 20 miles south of Bungay, Blythburough is located between them, only 8 miles away from the abbey. While the corpse may not prove to be the fabled Black Shuck, it is proof that massive dogs did exist in Suffolk around that time. Over the years, facts and details of that day's catastrophic and tragic events have been exaggerated, conflated, manipulated, and forever lost to the sands of time. The truth is, we may never know what the devilish hellhound that visited Bungay and Blythburough was, where it came from, or where it went. But it is probably best if you find yourself in Suffolk, England, and it begins to rain, and it begins to thunder, and it begins to storm. Think twice before seeking shelter anywhere with a sign that reads, "Beware of dog."
Oh my God.
Whoa.
That is horrific. Holy hell. Good God.
That was a crazy story.
I mean, yeah. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, look, I've been up to crazier stuff, but good God.
And it brings down a church.
Yeah, he took down the whole church by himself. A dog. He doesn't even have thumbs.
No morals, this dog.
No, none. At that point, he's just like, I don't give a shit.
And he's a hellhound, right?
He is living up to the name. I mean, look, I know it's a hellhound, but there's limits. Jesus Christ. He's just like, I'm a hellhound, and I'm going to prove it. I'm going to walk into a church and kills 2 guys right in front of everybody. Holy shit. I'm pretty sure the third guy's crippled for life. Oh, my God.
2 churches.
2? He was in 2 churches. Look, I'm going to tell you right now, we should just be shocked that at this point, the damn thing just didn't crap in the middle of the floor on his way out the door.
You think anyone would pick that up?
Are you kidding me? Would you? That thing it'd still be sitting there. I wouldn't touch it. My guess is it just would just be on fire and just burn through the floor and just burn its way right back to hell. Good God.
Ugh, imagine that smell.
It can't smell good.
I bet it's just not as bad as skunk ape. I mean, he's your buddy, right?
You know, buddy is a loose term. Cooter the skunk ape is more family.
Oh, okay.
Well, I'm like distant cousin. Distant, like 2, 3, 7, 7th gen. I don't know. It's like way down the line. But yeah, technically he is family, and he does smell like a bag of like dirty diaper. Just smell. It is horrific. And again, you're right. You're right. It's probably far worse than whatever the hell comes out of a hellhound's ass. I will tell you already now.
You know who doesn't smell? It's our guest.
Jesus Christ, that's what you went with. I'm going to tell you, as far as transitions go, I'm giving that one a solid 8.
Sam.
Yes, Laura, what's going on?
Guess who our guest is this week?
I have no idea.
It is author and podcaster, Andy McGrath.
Ooh, Andy McGrath.
Yes.
Oh my God, Andy McGrath. Okay, so Andy McGrath, author of Beasts of the World, Volume 1, Hairy Humanoids, and Beasts of Britain.
Yes.
That Andy McGrath.
And what's his podcast title?
Beastly Theories.
Yes.
Oh my God. Oh, I'm so excited. Oh.
He is an expert on Black Shuck because he lives over there in Britain.
Wait. So he's in Britain now and we're talking to him? I wonder if it's tomorrow there already.
We're like time traveling.
I'm not going to lie. I'm excited.
All right, Sam, let's just get to our guest.
All right. With no further ado. Okay, here he is. The one and only. It's our guest for tonight. Podcaster and author of Beasts of Britain. The one and only. It's Andy McGrath. Andy, how you doing tonight, buddy?
I'm doing great. Nice to see you, Sam.
Hey, nice to see you too, man. This is awesome. I know it's pretty late there, so thank you so much for joining us.
Well, listen, it's always the witching hour for me, Sam. So you're very welcome, and it's good to see you finally in the flesh.
Well, thank you.
At least someone believes in him.
Yeah, I do. I believe in Sam more than Bigfoot, to be honest with you.
Oh, come on now. Hey. My mom believes in me, all right? Come on. So thank you for joining us here tonight. And of course, tonight we're talking about the Black Shuck. And we thought, being that you are the author of Beasts of Britain, who better to talk to? I mean, obviously, we got to talk to Andy McGrath. So Andy, what can you tell us about the Black Shuck? I mean, being that he's in your backyard.
He is. I mean, he is literally. He's a beast in my backyard. And when I added him actually to the third version of the book, because originally Beasts of Britain was just about possible unknown animals around the UK. So when I added him to the book, I had to look at a possible flesh and blood origin for this animal. But nevertheless, the Black Shuck is it's basically just a ghostly black dog, and that's said to roam the coastline and countryside of East Anglia. East Anglia is kind of like a little shoulder that juts out on the upper southeast portion of England. It has the counties of Norfolk, Suffolk, Cambridgeshire, Essex, etc. Within it, and has lots of stories and tales for many, many hundreds of years of these ghostly black dogs called shucks or sukas. Okay, and that derives from the Old English word suka, meaning devil or fiend or to terrify. Now, these shucks have plagued the countryside there, and I've been there recently. It's a beautiful area. They've plagued the countryside for many, many years. And one of the very, very stand-outish accounts of the shucks, which I've recently investigated for a documentary called Weird Britain, is that of the Beast of Bungay. Now, the Black Shuck in the Beast of Bungay and the Beast of Blythburough Church, that they were seen on the same day, in fact, it was said to be this huge black shuck and entered into the church during a terrible thunderstorm, ran up to the pews at the front, killed 2 people before running out and leaving these huge scorch-like marks, almost devil-like marks. And it was seen almost as an embodiment of the devil, and come into the church and kill people there, then made its way to Blythburough Church, where pretty much the same happened, and it caused havoc and allegedly some casualties with the choir, and made off into the night, never to be seen again.
People have said that the dog. It's a huge, mangy black dog with red, fiery eyes. It's the size of a horse. I've also heard that it has just one eye, like a cyclops. Have you heard that too?
I've heard several stories that some of them seem to have like a cyclopean presentation, so one-eyed, luminous, bioluminescent red eye as well. So it's not just that the dog has a red hue to its eyes. The eyes can be seen to be glowing red in the night. But there's also another aspect to these dogs, which is very strange. So some of the sightings, I've got a few of them here, describe the dogs actually dematerializing before the witness's very own eyes. So there's a tale in the Coltishall Bridge, which is in Norwich, which is in East Anglia. And there was 2 RAF officers. They were traveling by car back from Norwich to RAF Coltishall, which is an airbase. They were passing over Coltishall Bridge, and they were forced to brake as this enormous black dog crossed the road, slowly turned its head and glared at them, and then vanished near the other side of the road, literally dematerialized, disappeared. Now, they said its bill was like a Labrador, but it was in height at the level of the roof of their car, which was about 1.35 meters. Yeah, so really tall animal, way out of the range for any known domestic species. Another encounter took place in the same area in the 1950s on the same bridge. And a woman and her husband, they were parked on the bridge. And nightfall, they saw this black dog about the size of a pony walking towards them. And it also vanished before reaching the other side of the road.
And they also said if you hear his blood-curdling howl, right? That was, if you heard that too, then it was a bad omen as well, right?
That's right. And if you think about that, that has a lot of relation to Banshee legends. There's lots of Banshee stories and tales around the UK as well as other places. So you've got the Hag of the Dribble in England. You've got the Irish Banshee, where we get the word Banshee from. You also have in Wales the Gwrach y Ribbon, which is it's basically this terrible banshee like witch-like creature that flies around the place. And if you hear her moans, or if you hear her calling to you, my husband, or my child, it's basically your doom.
Crazy, ghostly demon dogs.
Oh.
Scary.
Yes, very scary. Very scary. And of course, she'd be calling to you in Welsh as well, so you might not pick up on the warning signs.
Now there are the tales of these black dogs that are sometimes thought of as like omens, or harbingers of doom. Is that the same as the Black Shuck, or are these two totally different things that are just being conflated sometimes?
No, I mean, I think it's important to understand the superstitious mentality that ruled all of the world at that time, and still rules a large portion of the world now. And that is that strange apparitions and animals that are seen are always a portent of some sort of ill luck. And usually the person that saw this Black Shuck, or the people that saw it, they were believed, at least in former times, in ancient times, to be cursed in some way. They would die, or somebody in their family would meet a terrible end because they've seen the dog of death, this beastly Black Shuck. And that would definitely be most positively 100% a portent of impending doom.
Oh my God! Now, Andy, can I call you Andy?
Yeah, that's my name. Sure.
Awesome. So A-Dog, what I'm wondering here is, now this thing, this Black Shuck, this thing, now, when it comes to cryptids and things like that, now we're lucky if we get a hair, we're lucky if we get a footprint. This thing straight up murdered people, right? I mean, this thing killed people. So there are literally people in graves right now where on their death certificate, it would say cause of death, Black Shuck. So here's my question. This thing is like a straight up menace. How the hell are we not looking for this right now? I mean, Jesus Christ.
Well, I mean, I do believe that some animals are incredibly long-lived, like the Greenland shark, and others, for instance, have been shown to live for hundreds and hundreds of years. I think they found one recently with like a harpoon from the 17th century in it, didn't they? However, dogs don't have such great innings when it comes to lifespan. So if this was a real flesh and blood creature, which I believe it probably was, some mad dog or some escaped animal coming from somewhere scared and terrified by the storm, and those things are shown to have terrible effects, fireworks and things like that, on animals, then it should be dead at this point. And the carcass of that 7-foot beast in the remains of Leinster Abbey seems to point at least to this legend having a cryptid corpse left in its wake.
So do you think it was just hysteria that, it was a really bad thunderstorm and lightning, and just the wind could have blew the doors open, and people just, again, were superstitious and freaked out, and then the steeple came down?
Yeah, well, I mean, and that's likely to have been because of the lightning. Most likely, the very same lightning that sent the dog bolting into the church in the first place, for shelter, and then running out of that church, it made its way to the next one in Blythburough. I think it's more than likely. And with all of these things, I mean, I love cryptozoology, I love the paranormal and mysteries. We've always got to look for possible flesh and blood explanations, because life is mostly explained by those types of situations, those types of phenomena.
So just out of curiosity, so between the two churches where this happened, what is the distance between those? Like, what are we talking here? Like, could a dog potentially actually run like between those spots?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's just a couple of miles between those two churches. I traveled between them by car. I think it's a few miles. It's not far at all. Especially not for a demon dog, inhabited by the forces of hell and burning fire in its wake, traveling through the countryside.
Well, and plus it's already
shock and awe. Yeah,
it's already being powered by two souls, it's claimed. So
yeah, exactly. To get those souls in there, it really picks up speed. Yeah, it does.
I mean, if something like that runs into a church, runs right to the front, and murders you right in front of Jesus, doesn't even care. I can see where people would be like, you had it coming, right? I mean, you got to write that off as that was something supernatural, because that is crazy. I mean, that just doesn't happen in the natural world, or that's what they have to tell themselves, because otherwise the alternative is terrifying. That could happen any day, at any time.
But Sam, I mean, you're right. It certainly could happen, but I just have a few ideas on it. One, could it have been a wolf-dog hybrid? During that time, there were still wolves in Britain during that time, although they were quite rare. Could they have been breeding with some of the local dogs and been living out in the countryside, and again being scared and come in and those instincts took over? Maybe brought on by the screams of the parishioners, or even attacks from the people inside the church trying to get rid of the animal. Or could it be some sort of extinct Miocene megafauna, which is a long shot, but there's the Epicenion hydeni, this giant wolf that used to be native to North America and other parts of the world, that used to stand at 3 foot tall over the shoulder at the shoulders. So that's almost the size of an African lion, which this beast is said to be in some of the reports as well. So I think it's definitely a possibility, although most of these things do seem to fall into the supernatural spectre, the demon dogs or the hellhound category. And if they're real, could these non-corporeal entities be a sort of a residual replay, as some ghosts that walk a certain route are, where the environment somehow, theoretically, has captured an incident that's taken place a long time ago and then keeps replaying it, almost as if it's a hologram, I guess, when those same atmospheric conditions are repeated within the environment.
So, Andy, answer me this. How do we know we're not dealing with some sort of like Cujo, Elizabethan era sort of situation here? Just some local farmer's dog, gets rabies, and just goes to town on everybody. You know what I'm saying? And meanwhile, everyone's like, "Hey, Jimmy, your goddamn dog's killing everyone down the church, you dumb son of a bitch!" Like, how do we know it's in a situation like that?
This area as well, this part of Suffolk, and I've been there. It's even now, it's really, really rural. And it's very small, has a small population. During that time, during the 1500s, if this dog had been owned by a local in some way, everybody would have known about it. There would be no way to hide ownership of such an animal. So in one way, you have to wonder, could it have been something else? And if it was a monster imposter, a lot of the dimensions described do look like a large Irish wolfhound. They do sometimes have a very, very shaggy black coat. And I have seen specimens of these lovely, lovely gentle dogs, actually, for the most part, that are huge, absolutely huge. So now what's interesting is that in this area, there's an old abbey, an abbey that was actually destroyed and taken apart by Henry VIII when he converted the whole country to Anglicanism, to the Church of England, and paid the abbess off and got rid of all the monks. But within the grounds there in 2014, diggers, archaeologists working at the site found the body of a huge 7-foot-long dog, an actual dog. Could have been a Great Dane or some sort of giant wolfhound or something like that. Nevertheless, the body was taken off site by the diggers, taken away for DNA analysis, and to this date, they've never come back with any results to show us what type of species this was.
Now, could it also have been the church scaring people to, stay loyal and go to church every Sunday?
I think these cautionary moral tales that feature lots of very religious countries, and Britain's no different to that. I think they normally have a basis in some sort of fact, some sort of event. So I don't doubt that the event has been embellished over the years. I'm sure the scorching of the claws, the devil sort of scorched claws on the door, came probably a lot later. Most likely we're looking at some terrible event where there was a lightning strike, the church steeple fell in, some poor animal got caught up in the mix, and the legend grew from there. In my personal opinion, and even some of the early writers and people who popularized this legend sort of admitted to embellishing the supernatural aspects of it, because this is East Anglia, so Shucks, it's almost like it's an Anglo phenomenon. It doesn't occur as much in other parts of the country, and they have similar animals in Scandinavia, and the Vikings. They would have the snarly owls and other bits and pieces like that. So it's clearly. And it's well within what would have been the Danelaw in the old days, when the Vikings had it on top of the Angles. It's clearly very Germanic influenced and Scandinavian influenced supernatural beast. And what interests me about that is you find almost a cutoff in some ways for the popularity of these sightings outside of that area they once would have ruled in Britain. It's not known as much in the Celtic areas. So it's a strange thing. You find that all over the world. For instance, if you look at the duende of Central and South America, well, where's the only other place, the other two places in the world where the duende occurs? In Portugal and Spain. Well, what a coincidence,
Right.
That those are the colonists, and whether the duende is a local native population's way of sharing some tales of their own little people in a language that the colonists would understand, or a legend that's been brought over and adopted, we don't know, but it's still, no smoke without fire, I guess.
Now, has there been sightings recently?
There's not really recent sightings, but in terms of this, I think there was a creature seen in a place called Cobham in Surrey in 2010. So somebody had gone for a walk on the common there, on Cobham Common, Longcross Common, and they saw this large black canine on all fours walk out of the tree line, sniffing the ground and the air. It's really, really huge in build, had this dense black coat of hair and fur, large pointed ears. But the people that saw it, they couldn't describe the species. They'd never seen a dog like that or behave like that, about 3 foot plus in height at the shoulder. So that was quite an interesting sighting. Again, further back in 1972 in Galston, there was a report in the Eastern Daily Press from a Coast Guard, a man called Graham Grant, and he was at the rescue headquarters early one morning, and he saw this strange thing. So he looked out, and about 4:45 a.m. daybreak, April 19th, he sees this large black hound on the beach. It's about a quarter of a mile north of the lookout. And he's confused because he's looking at something that's running and stopping as if it's looking for someone. But as he's watching it, 3, 4, 5 minutes, it suddenly vanishes before his eyes.
Oh.
And he doesn't see it again. And he says, the beach was completely flat. There was no hills. There were no sand dunes. There was nowhere for the beast to go. And it didn't disappear from sight. It just dematerialized right before him.
Oh, that's so creepy. It's so creepy. Oh my God. So just out of curiosity, now the storm that night, or the storm that like, I believe that takes place in the morning at the church. Was there anything else remarkable about that storm? Or, I mean, like, in the sense of, like, I mean, was it a hurricane, or was it, I mean, like, because everyone was in the church, like, hiding, weren't they?
We don't really get hurricanes. We do get little squalls, but this was a very, very fierce storm. And remember, this is a very rural area. So there's thunder and lightning. You don't want to be outside. Basically, you want to be inside. And regardless of that, this is on a morning, people would be at the church because it would be probably a church service that's happening right there. Now, in this area, actually, there's a great festival that happens called the Black Shuck Festival, which I'll be attending this year on the 4th and 5th of August, where they dress up as the black dog, and they recreate the whole activity, and they go into the churches. They go into St. Mary's Church in Bungay, and they go to Blythburough Church, where the beast was trapped and where its claw marks are supposed to be, burned into the surface of the door. And that can be seen to this day. And they reenact the whole thing, and the whole town takes part. There's art, there's music, there's people dressed as the dog, going in and attacking the church, so to speak, I think, and people fighting it off. And it's really, really amazing. As to whether there was a reason for them being in the church or not, I would assume, and I don't know this for sure, that it was probably during a service that this happened, that they weren't taking shelter.
They weren't taking shelter there. They were just
they were
service.
the church during the service. Yeah.
So just out of curiosity, the festival they had with the reenactment stuff. I mean, do they go so far as, like, I mean, they draw on straws and, like, figure out who's going to get killed by the Black Shuck? I mean, do they, I'm just saying. I'm wondering, do they, like, Hunger Games this?
I don't think it's a Hunger or Squid Games kind of thing. We're still English. We're still civilized, and it's nothing like the Wicker Man. I mean, contrary to popular belief, we don't do like they do up in the Western Isles in Scotland and sacrifice our guests. Yeah, no, I think it's nothing like that happens. And it's a shame because, I'm sure in this day and age, there's always somebody deserving, right? They draw lots 100%. For that thing. But no, unfortunately not. No locals are sacrificed to appease the beast on a yearly basis.
No. You don't want to be sacrificing locals, okay? Otherwise, you're not going to get the townspeople to back you, all right? What you need to do is you need to sacrifice a tourist. That's what they do in all those movies, And because no one likes tourists, no one likes outsiders in their town, you know what I'm saying? And besides, look, I'm from America, all right? We'll kill each other over nothing, all right? You cut us off in traffic, it's curtains, You forgot to give us our fries with our fast food order. You're done. It's over. You know what I'm saying? So I think dying for a festival and for culture, I mean, that seems like a potentially worthy cause. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely, Sam. But look, I think the whole point of it is that in the old days, medieval times especially, and thereon, you've got a superstitiously imbibed population of people. We were then, like you are now, in those very superstitious, very religious places that you go to in sort of Midwest and other places where people still have a lot of religion. We were very much like that then. And it was also a time when, shortly after, during that period, when the Church of England had been created, and all of the old Catholic vestiges of the religion here in the UK had been drawn away. There were wars over it, there were conflicts over it, and there was also persecutions over it. So everybody was looking around for people that could be in league with the devil, or people that could be, imbued with some sort of dark spirit. And these mythical things that perhaps had a bit more sway in the early 500 to 600s had come back into the vernacular again, and people were worried about them. So I think it's very natural that we would have explained away some crazy circumstance, some terrible misfortune. Imagine you're God's flock, you're worshiping in his church, and the roof collapses on you right after a dog bursts in a thunderstorm and kills 2 of your congregation, and goes and does the same thing a few miles down the road. What did we do wrong? Misfortune was a punishment from above. So I think that's really wrapped up in this, in this superstition with this animal. It was an omen, a bad omen. And if you were killed by it, like these people certainly seem to have been, then it was because you did something terrible and deserved it.
So we do have more recent sightings, but do you think that now has been taken over by the big black cat sightings that seems to be happening all over? Are they not even related, or did one just kind of surpass the other?
There's theories about the black cats as well. Now, the Black Shuck sightings, realistically, there have not been regular sightings for hundreds of years. It's an old folk tale. It's a legend, and has some modern appearances, but few and far between. Which is why I wondered about this residual haunting theory, in the sense of something is captured that happened in real life. It was only theoretical, and is replayed almost like a hologram when those atmospheric conditions, almost like a pinhole camera, are recreated in the same place again, which would perhaps account for the apparitions dematerializing as well, because it's walked offset, so to speak. So could that be an idea about it? Whereas with the black cats, we have an origination point. It's 1976, Dangerous Wild Animals Act is introduced into Britain because people are keeping pumas and leopards and crocodiles and all kinds of things in their sheds and on their farms, just wandering around. People are walking lions down Oxford Street, and for real, and you could buy a lion in Harrods in London, in the 70s, and or keeping them in their flats, and it's getting out of hand. So we introduced this law, 1976. You gotta have these really huge enclosures for these animals. They have to be air conditioned. There has to be room to run around. Excuse me. And there has to be all of these stipulations, expensive care stipulations put into place. But what we don't do is introduce a law that says you can't let them go, or that they have to be rehoused somewhere. We don't give them any help to rehouse them if they can't keep them any longer. Lots of people admit years later to having let them go. And what we have now at the moment in the UK is thousands upon thousands of sightings over the last 47 years that seem to be growing in number every year. Now, of course, there's lots of mistaken identities. These savannah exotic breed cats, the mix between a serval and a domestic cat, they're very popular. People often get the F1s as well, and the F1s are actually the first generation. They're very, very big. Even though they're still sort of striped with almost a tabby-like markings. But that's one thing. Perhaps what we mostly have here is sightings of melanistic leopards. So a huge amount, not your regular average leopard, but a melanistic leopard, and pumas. That's the second most cited, lynx being the third. And what's interesting about that is actually there aren't a lot of melanistic leopards in the world. And I could test that, but this theory a long time ago that if they were found to be here, big black cats, melanistic leopards in the UK, could we perhaps have one of the highest populations in the world unofficially, because those were the popular pets that breeders sort of bred and sold to people. They wanted this black cat, but in nature they're sort of unusual. They don't occur very often, and of course those genes are passed down. So I don't know. What I do know is my sister-in-law and my nieces saw one in Wales about 2-3 months ago, I believe, and called me and said, look, we think we've just seen a black female lion. She's got no skin in the game. She didn't even know what she's looking at, wandering around in the fields on the way home. And we watched it for 10 minutes, no pictures. And, if you're not that interested. And then, she said when we left, it was still walking around. but we had to get home. And do you think it's escaped? And I said, no, it's local. It's
Wow.
local. Yeah. So they're not the same thing.
I mean, honestly, I think your theory's pretty spot on, you know? I mean, so Britain's like an island, you know? So you got this sort of trapped breeding population, a small breeding population. And so if they have a trait, you know, that just keeps getting passed down, I mean, it would make sense that it, you know, wouldn't be that rare, you know? I mean, it's kind of like, like the Galapagos Islands, you know, or something, so Hemingway used to go to this island in Key West, you know, and he had these 6-toed cats, you know, and they're called Hemingway cats. Well, the thing is, by a certain point, like half the cats on this island had 6 toes, you know, and there's cats everywhere, and to the point where if you have a cat now that has 6 toes, chances are you can trace it back to that island, you know. It's crazy, but what I'm saying is, so like if you have a small breeding population stuck in a concentrated area, that something as rare as like 6 digits, you know, that now becomes the norm. I mean, you're basically watching evolution happen, you know.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
And how many would have been let go in the first place? I mean, people are even talking about seeing puma leopard hybrids, or puma and leopards together, male and female. I don't know about that. I interviewed somebody recently who saw that in the west of England, southwest of England. Said he'd actually seen a black, either a melanistic puma, which I thought was impossible. Apparently, can happen, and a regular puma. Either that, he said, or it was a black leopard and a puma together, male and female, walking. And I was like, wow, that's a crazy sighting. One that shouldn't take place, but could the pressures of, I suppose, few mates, few and far between, in an island like this, where you're essentially the survivors from disparate species that were let go, could that lead to some really unusual hybridization, even? Or, of course, the melanistic gene, in the case we were talking about, being passed down, you know, time and time and time again.
I don't think it's that crazy of an idea myself. I mean, look. You hear about this all the time, about like animals like from totally different species, like, you know, buddying up together. You know, you got like a hippo and a tortoise, or a bear and like a tiger. You know, so if you know, if you get like a leopard and a puma end up like finding each other in the wild, you know, especially when they weren't raised under normal circumstances and don't understand that they're not the same thing, you know, they may just see another big cat, you know, and you know, they're similar enough that they end up like, you know, budding up or mating, you know? So I look, I've seen Rottweiler Chihuahua hybrids. All right. So like, shit, I mean, Christ, it's all fair game.
It's a really strange thing. I mean, when I first wrote that Beasts of Britain book, even the 3rd version recently, I just keep strange things, you know, really, really strange things that don't make sense. And I suppose, because we're an island, yes, but it's strange to think of the way British people think of it. Most British people don't feel like they live on an island because it's a big island, and not everybody lives next to the sea. So, you know, you don't check that sort of box all the time. And it, you know, you can spend 11 hours driving from the top to the bottom. It's not really, really small, but there's lots of animals here that have been in the past, and even in the present, lots of invasive species too. There's certainly a lot of places that these black shucks, if they were a natural species, that they could hang out even in a thin, small population. They could easily hang out of sight. And the countryside here after dark, it's pristine. It's completely black. And we have these, if you've ever been, you know, these country lanes, which they have these high hedges, basically been grown over hundreds of years, and they just kind of twist like this, you know, sort of like a snake, all the way. And you're just driving in the dark. And most of the people have these road sightings. Black Shuck, that's happened a few times with big cats also, even with some of these alleged British Bigfoot sightings, have these road sightings. It's momentary, you know. It's a big hedge next to you and a big hedge on the other side. Something crosses really quickly, and then it's gone. You don't even really know what you've seen before it's it's away.
Well, and I to go along with what you said, I'm sure a lot of people don't understand that, like, that, yeah, it's an island and it's quite large, but it's not like it's completely populated people from one end to the other. I mean, there's huge chunks where there's nobody,
It really is. I did this when people were harassing me about this British Bigfoot thing. When I started investigating it, saying, no, there couldn't possibly be anything here because all of Britain is just overpopulated. There's 68 million of us, or whatever it is. And there's nowhere for them to be. And I thought, okay, well, let's look at this. Let's look at some government studies. And I found this thing in 2012. It was called the National Ecosystem Assessment. And it was a government-paid assessment to look at the usage of the land and the inhabitation of the land by people as well. So they found that overall 6.8%, only 6.8% of the entirety of Britain, that's the island of Britain, was urban sprawl. So that's population centres plus motorways and rural settlements. Excuse me, sorry. So that's for 68 million people. We're inhabiting 6.8% of the land. Now in England, it's really, really highly populated. That's about 10.6% of England. I think it was 4.6% of Wales. Scotland, 1.9% of the entire landmass was populated.
Wow.
That's it. And that's my experience whenever I go to Scotland. There's just nobody there.
Yeah.
Basically. And that's what it's like. So when we get outside of our little cities, we get out into the countryside, which I do quite regularly, you're suddenly faced with the prospect of, okay, it doesn't mean something is here, but something could be, and we would miss it. That's the point.
Now, do you think you're going to see a Black Shuck, Andy?
I don't know. I'm pretty terrified of dogs anyway, and they know it. So I've seen plenty of like terrifying black dogs, and I live in an area that's full of sort of yummies as well. So they treat their dogs like kids. So they're not really strict with them. So they're off the leash, and wouldn't hurt a fly until you're that fly. So yeah, I don't know. I've seen plenty of terrifying real dogs. As to whether they could be some strange wolf dog hybrid or supernatural emanation in the countryside, it's an old country, and I stick with my residual theory on old scenes that once existed replaying as though we're on a holographic film set. And I think that's largely what people could be seeing sometimes.
Well, speaking of, when you're talking about the film set, now picture this in your head. There you are, walking outside, walking down a street late at night by yourself, country lane, and all of a sudden, boom, red eyes. And out from the shadow steps a giant black shuck. And you're like, oh, this is it. I'm done. And out of nowhere comes one of the alien black cats, and they just start fighting in front of you. Oh, my God. I want that movie right now. I want Hollywood to make that right now. That sounds amazing.
Who do you think would win?
I think that the Shook would win, obviously, but as for my own reaction, I would just Lewis Tully that enough. I'd be like, nice doggy, nice pooch. Maybe I got a milk ball and scream.
Well, either way, I'm guessing that the fighting animals will give you a chance to get away, and I think that's all that's really important in this.
It'd be like a Harryhausen movie, once those ogres and dragons and saber-tooths and other things start fighting each other, I'll be out of there. Yeah, and that's what they should have done. You think about
that's
it.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, I heard that the towns, they have like the black dog on like the weather vane. It's part of like their coat of arms. Like there's stores named after the Black Shuck and all that stuff. So I think that's really fun that they're taking part of this, folklore.
It is. And I think it's good that they're sort of leaning into it, finally. Of course, there's been businesses and other bits and pieces named after it for a long time, but it's great that they now have a festival. But it's not the only thing in that town. Bungay, for example, there's so many creepy things around there. So there's a place we investigated recently called the 3 Tons Inn, which is supposed to be, I think it goes back to the 13 or 1400s, and it's supposedly inhabited by 27 ghosts. And this inn still has the original decor, the original wood and carvings inside it. It's really huge place, and has sort of basements and dungeons. There used to be a passageway at the bottom, which is now blocked off, leading right up to the castle, which you could sort of, I guess, escape from or escape to during an invasion or something like that. And we went there also and interviewed, but they have apparently very, very active experiences, the staff working in that place. And as you go in, you can see all of the walls. There's Black Shuck, that everywhere in the town. So I think they've leaned into it, and good for them, because it's a great legend.
So Andy, where can people find you?
Well, you can find me on Facebook, facebook.com/bsolve, Beastly Theories. Either is fine. You'll find me there. I'm also on TikTok and Instagram and all the other little social media things. If you want the book, Beast of Britain, which I talk about Black Shuck, then you can get that on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or wherever you like to buy books. There's also an excellent audiobook narrated by Jonathan Rufus Welsh. He does have an English accent, but one that's more intelligible than mine. He's very clear, he's enunciated, and it makes me sound like I know what I'm talking about, which is really nice.
And you actually have another book out there currently too, don't you?
Yep, it's called Hairy Humanoids. It's part of the Beast of the World series. The first one is Hairy Humanoids, and that talks about different Bigfoot type legends around the world, speculates on the possibility of there being more than one species. Not my own theory, but what I sort of subscribe to, the ape man type, the wild man type, the Littlefoots, the ape type, and looks at these reports all around the world and just breaks them down. So the nice thing about that book, and there's an audiobook of that too, is you can just jump in at any creature that you want along the way. Just read about that, put it down, and pick it up on a different day and go to a different bit, and it'll give you an overview. It'll give you the etymology of the name. It'll look at evidence, sightings, and theories about it, and give you the whole background to what it looks like, where it's supposed to live. So it's always kind of like, sort of like a Top Trumps sort of version of cryptids, Dungeons and Dragons. You've got its powers, you've got its features, and what it can do, where it lives, and that's nice. And even when I occasionally go back and leaf through a book, I just pick up the book and look at some cryptid that I like for that particular day.
Yeah. And
the interesting thing about that book, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but if I'm not mistaken, Bigfoot actually is not in the book.
Yeah, you've got the book, of course.
Oh, I've read it.
Yes,
I have read it.
But there's a reason for that. Okay, and the reason is this: that Bigfoot was in the book, and he does appear in the book at the end as a sort of a summary as to why he's not in the book, which is strange. And in the section called Bigfoot on the Brain, which is my ode, it's my shout out to my brethren in the Finding Bigfoot team. And I think that's it's a phrase that always stuck with me. I love that phrase. And I use it when I'm secretly use it when I'm taking sightings. Got to look at that aspect. So in the book, the whole point was this: is that I want to look at reports all around the world and investigate those in a sort of an objective way. What are the main theories surrounding these? What's the main evidence? Bigfoot is a subject. The North American Bigfoot is a subject all of its own. It's huge, and you could write several books just on the sightings and the evidence and the theories, and then spend the next 5 years fighting people who disagree with you. And I just thought, don't do it, or at least don't do it yet. You can't give it the attention it deserves. It needs a proper book. So maybe I'll do that. I do say in the book that I'm going to write a book about it. But after doing that, I then pen outlines for like 4, 5, 6, 7 other books. There's about 10 I've got in my inbox at the moment that I really want to work on. But it's just slow going, I guess. So no Bigfoot in that book. Sorry to say.
I was not insulted by that. I was not insulted by the fact Bigfoot did not appear in there, because you said it was a topic that deserved its own book. And I'm like, you know what? This guy gets it. He gets me. He understands me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Sam's not going to take this shit. I'm going to make sure that it gets its own book with him on a cover. And yeah, absolutely. He's not going to put up with that.
Yeah, you know how hard it would be for me to actually get to you? I mean, my God. That's all I'm saying. I mean, it's like, not that I would try, but it would be almost impossible for me to get to you. So you can really do anything you want at this point. But I mean, just so you know, like, you weren't in danger, because I wasn't insulted at all.
Well, I appreciate that, Sam. And I'm not one of them, protected up from up on high, but the Prince of Darkness types. I'm pretty accessible. And even if somebody wants to get me, I've kind of got no defense for that. But,
Unless I can mail myself to you, there ain't much I can do. I'm not getting to you. I'm not going to be sitting in first class anytime soon. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, Sam.
Well, Andy, thank you so much for being on the show. This has been fun and interesting, and I hope I don't run into any Black Shucks. So thank you again.
Well, yeah, thank you, Laura. It's great to meet you finally, as well as and your good friend Sam, to see him in flesh. And yeah, cheers for having me on. It's been awesome.
Yes, thank you.
It's been a lot of fun, man. Thanks for talking to us.
Bye, Sam. Bye, Laura.
Bye.
You know what? I think that went pretty well.
I like Andy. He is knowledgeable and just a very nice guy.
He really is a nice guy. You know what? I'm just going to say right now. Like, he's not here or anything, but I swear, I could tell you right now, that man smells like hugs.
Hugs.
I
was going with tea, but...
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, tea and crumpets. 100%. But hugs, goddammit. I'm talking about... Well, okay, you know what?
Yes.
I really think this is going pretty well. This is only our third time out. I don't want to say that we've pretty much nailed this shit, but I think we're nailing this shit, you know?
We are. You know what? We get along. Okay.
Yeah, I'd say better than some, but I you know what?
Could be worse.
It could be worse.
Could be better.
Well, I'll tell you right now, there's guys in prison cells that don't get along as well as we do. They're just shanking the shit out of each other right now. So I think we're doing all right.
We set the bar pretty low.
We really do. God damn it, we do. We really do.
But you know what? We're making it work.
Yeah, we're like two peas in a podcast.
Yeah.
You know what? Hey, I think we should celebrate. Let's get the hell out of here. Why don't you do the outro? Let's get out of here. And you know what?
I want some tacos now that we talked about it.
Yes.
A good chicken taco.
Well, I can't go there with you. Good God. Ugh. But you know what? I am willing to do tacos. The chicken part is disgusting, but I will absolutely do tacos with you. And I think there's actually a taco truck just around the corner.
All right, let's go.
Hey, you do the outro. Let's go.
All right. Be sure to follow us at creepyacres.com. We're also on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Threads, Twitter, and you can always buy merch at tpublic.com.
Hey, thanks for listening, everybody. And as always, hey, keep it creepy.